Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. Finally, Donald Trump's tax returns are being made public. What do they show? What has he been hiding? Also, the Exonerated Five made a triumphant return to Central Park, and this time to be celebrated. We will explain. But first, Democrats in the House and Senate have introduced a bill to overhaul the use of force codes by police officers. There's no better person to talk about this than NMPA journalist Barrington Salmon. Hey, Barrington, what's going on? I can't hear you, Barrington. You on mute.
Morning. How are you?
You should only let Mimi mute you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, you can hear me now. How are you?
Barrington, Democrats in the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate got together on Tuesday and introduced a bill aimed at reforming the standard for police use of force in the final days of the congressional session. The Peace Act of 2022, an acronym for Police Exercising Absolute Care with Everyone, was introduced in both chambers of Congress by California lawmakers, Rep. Ro Khanna and Senator Alex Padilla. So, Barrington, this bill would change federal law to state that a law enforcement officer may only use deadly force or less lethal force unless it is absolutely necessary. If the bill is passed into law, it would only require federal law enforcement, of course, to adhere to the new standard. However, the bill would also encourage states to adopt similar laws or policies. Here's the thing. So we hear about when they pass these federal legislations when it comes to use of force or police or even the prisons. Just to give you an idea of what I'm saying, a couple of months ago, everyone celebrated when the president signed into law that marijuana bill. Well, that's only for federal, pardons, as someone enters the room. That was only for federal. If you were convicted of a federal marijuana charge, that you are now that those charges went away, not the state. And here is another example of where the states need to follow, right?
Yeah, but the thing that it looks all good on paper, Stacy, but they've passed. We have 18,000 police departments in the United States.
Yep.
And not one system that governs all of them. It's all well and good for law enforcement under federal control to do this, but how many times have you read about some federal police officer choking out and killing a black person?
My point exactly.
Yep. So if they want to really make me jump up and down and roll out the ceiling, they need to make it that the states do it, that local jurisdictions do it, because that's where the problem is. And I mean, I think about it sometimes and I despair because I actually thought that we may have turned the corner when after that Chauvin killed
George
Floyd, and but if you look at the numbers of people that are killed by cops in this country, it hasn't gone down. The Washington Post keeps stats, and some other organizations keep stats, and it's all 1,100, 1,000, more than 1,000, 1,100 people that they kill a year, predominantly black and brown people. So it hasn't changed, and we are still at war with state-sanctioned murder, extrajudicial murder. They kill us for every reason, and when you were talking about it in the beginning, I was thinking to myself, well, they're always going to say I fear for my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you read the way it's stated,
The way the bill is written, yep.
if the bill is written, they could still say, well, I fear for my life and da 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 da. So I don't know.
But you know what, Barrington, I think you nailed it too early on in what you were just saying. This we don't hear of federal officers kneeling on someone's neck. We don't hear of federal officers uh, executing people in the streets. We don't hear of these things from the federal officers, park police, or Secret Service, or we don't hear that.
Yeah,
We only hear that, as you said, from police officers that are hired by a city or state,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not the federal. So why aren't they attacking that? And here's the other part of it too. Let's be real. Now, this is a lame duck
Session.
session
Yeah,
of Congress,
yeah.
and it's going to turn over come January. What is it, 4th or whatever it is?
And then they're gonna tell the cops to kill every black person that you can find, because that's the type of people that you have that are gonna be in control of the House.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Completely, brazenly anti-black racists, petty white grievance, and all this stuff. So it's gonna be a very interesting 2 years. I don't think anything's gonna get done.
no, it's going to be a lot of subpoenas, a lot of
Subpoenas and
it's going to
going
be
after Hunter Biden's laptop
trying
and
to
and
impeach the
and trying to
president.
impeach President Biden
Yeah.
and all that foolishness. But I always keep on thinking that they tell us about the wisdom of the voters and stuff, and I wonder where the wisdom of the voters was to put these idiots in control of the House, because Jim Jordan is a fool, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz. It's a murderer's row of imbeciles.
Well, we've talked a whole lot about Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you wonder at what level of schooling did they drop out. It's just it's
White privilege doesn't need school and education, bruh. Alas, because I mean, every time I listen to Louis Gohmert, Texas's representative, speak, it's like I keep on wondering where did this dude come from? They have some of these people are some of the dimmest light bulbs in the history of the world.
Well, with going back to particularly Marjorie Taylor Greene, because I really Lauren Boebert is the female Herschel Walker. So she took too many hits to the head somewhere, right? But Marjorie Taylor Greene, for instance, is someone who is driven more. I think her ignorance, like many, is driven just simply by hate, and
Yeah,
she can't see anything past that hate she has, and so it translates into her, for lack of a better term, her dumbness.
but don't you? I've never differentiated her from the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be different levels of hatred. Hatred for anything, fear of a black planet.
All right, Chuck.
Yeah,
Chuck D.
Chuck D. Shout out to Chuck D. And Public Enemy. A desire to continue to maintain power. And if they have their way, we would have what is essentially a white minority apartheid government in control of this country indefinitely.
You know what? Here's the interesting thing. Again, we're talking about hate, right?
Mm.
And hate really makes a person ignorant and stupid, right?
Yeah.
To have so much hate. But if you go back to the late 1960s, the early 1970s, there was a TV show that we all remember, All in the Family, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That guy had so much racial hate,
yeah.
but it showed how stupid it was. His family would expose just how stupid his hate was, how stupid he was because of that hate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just as Austin writes in, comfortably ignorant and racist. Comfortably ignorant.
Yeah.
That is a really interesting term, isn't
Good morning, Austin.
it?
It is. Yeah, it is. And I mean, but the thing that I keep on looking at is just how shrewdly the leaders of the Republican Party, the right wing fringe, they call it. I don't think it's a fringe because they've embraced ideas that are really a part of the mainstream. But what we have is a confederacy of dunces, and then you have some really
Another fantastic slogan.
yeah, and then you have the folks at top who are manipulating them. But I've always said that the Republican leadership, you know, such and that's really a misnomer in this case, that they're riding a tiger that's going to end up eating them all.
You know what? You and I, and this just what 10 minutes or so, just underscored or highlighted the problem with the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
You know why?
Why?
We started off by talking about this piece of legislation that the Democrats
Yeah.
introduced in both chambers, right?
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
But most of this conversation has been about Republicans.
Yeah.
And it underscores the problem with Democrats because all throughout the election season, we had folks like yourself talking about voting and things of that nature, and participating in getting this person out. Democrats' messaging has never been there. Their messaging is horrible. For
But
us here to talk about, well, we
yeah.
have a a president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association who comes on from time to time and really extols the administration and Democrats,
Yeah.
you know, and really gives them their props,
Yeah.
right? So, but here we are, we're talking about the Republicans in a
But
bad light, in a
yeah.
truthful light,
Yeah.
but yet that's all you hear. You know, someone once said, Michael Jackson once said, I don't care if they talk bad about me. As long as they're talking about me, that
Yeah.
makes me relevant.
Yeah. But I think the problem it's so interesting because I did some interviews with some very learned folks post midterms, and a really good friend of mine, Kara Bolton, said that she doesn't give the Democrats any credit that they won in spite of themselves, and they've had a problem with messaging. When Joe Biden was talking about the threat to democracy, his quote unquote advisors and consultants said it was a bad idea. I think I wonder because in the same way that you go to a Burger King or some fast food joint and you hope that when your order comes that it's correct. Democrats do this every day, and every day they seem to show how hapless they are in putting it together. And I mean, I've said that I think a large part of the problem is that they do not know how to speak to or reach, and maybe they don't, or maybe they don't want to speak to or reach and anybody who is outside of the corral of the white middle class, a soccer mom, and that type of stuff. And they spend most of their time trying to recapture disaffected Trump supporters, disaffected Reagan supporters, when what they should be doing is concentrating and cultivating the Asians and the Latinos and the African Americans who really don't have anywhere else to go. They don't have anywhere else to go because the Republican Party is completely hostile to anything that has to do with Black people. And they tell you to your face that the things they say. I'm not going to use the word as
yeah, don't use the word Barrington.
But we all know, right? So maybe you can give the Democrats like 20% applause for what they did, but I don't think it's going to make a real difference at the end of the day.
Well, Barrington, at a small patch of Central Park flanking New York's Harlem neighborhood, scores came out Monday to remember the injustice that imprisoned 5 Black and Latino teenagers after they were wrongly accused and convicted of the 1989 rape of a white jogger. They arrived in the chill of a late fall morning, some signing autographs, singing hymns to dedicate a park entry to the men once known as the Central Park Five, but now remembered as the Exonerated Five. The entryway located on the northern perimeter of Central Park between Fifth Avenue and Malcolm X Boulevard will be known as the Gate of the Exonerated. And Barrington, one of the things that struck me with this getting together at Central Park this week, Raymond Santana, and understandably so, had not been back to Central Park
Wow.
since that
Since
fateful
yeah,
day 33 years ago.
yeah. I think it's a sometimes symbolism is important, and correcting this grievous injustice is important as well. It's kind of interesting because this to me just piles onto the former occupants' very horrible, miserable last few months. Um,
Well, yeah,
you,
you could easily tie him into this
oh
because you
yeah,
recall
yeah,
that when this happened,
yeah.
Trump took out full page ads in New York newspapers
Calling for the execution.
calling for their execution.
Yeah,
And then when they were exonerated, he doubled down on
yeah,
it.
yeah. So I'm really glad that the city's doing this. It's a continuation of their acknowledgement of their wrong, and I'm very very glad that the Exonerated Five got all the money that they did, because I keep on reading stories of people who were wrongly convicted, and they give them $700,000 or $1,000, $1,000,000 for 30 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years in jail, which
Yeah, and a big cut goes to the lawyer.
yeah, and the big cut goes to the lawyer, and of course, do you pay taxes on that?
Oh, absolutely, you
And then you pay
do.
taxes on that. So by the time you turn around, you might have $20. So
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah,
it's true, and it was just quite a sight to see
yeah, yeah.
those five
Were you
young
there?
men.
Did you go?
No, I did not go.
Okay.
Obviously, we're talking about the images here, seeing
Yeah.
the images. I guess I should clarify that, right? See the images of those five young men
Yeah.
back at Central Park under this circumstance. It was just tremendous. You see the
Yeah.
crowd of people,
Yeah. Yeah.
even in the images there, had to have been extremely emotional for them to return there. I just remember, living in New York at the time, born and raised in New York. I
Mhm.
just remember this like it was yesterday when that situation happened. It was almost as if they were telegraphing that they were going to set these kids up.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I remember when the wheels started really turning for them for the authorities to give these young men the money. And there was one white woman who was a prosecutor who was trying to be like the former occupants and doubling down. And they ate her for lunch. And I thought to myself, the evidence shows that you were wrong, and you're so arrogant that you want to say that you still stand by what you did. You destroyed the lives of these young men, and you're arrogant enough to think that it, regardless of what you did, there should be no accountability, no responsibility. And I'm glad she lost her job, because she was teaching at one of the New York colleges, universities. And after she came out with that, they were like, you can kindly go take a walk somewhere else. And that is what we got to do. We got
Yeah.
to stay on these people to hold them accountable and responsible, and when necessary, run them out of town.
Well, it's interesting, and going back to the settlement, the payout.
Yeah.
There is, I can't even think of an amount of money
No,
that could
yeah,
that could
yeah,
soothe what they went through.
yeah. And these were children.
And exactly,
It's a
exactly.
difference. It's a difference if you're adults, but these were children that they did this to. And I mean, you go anywhere around this country, and the amount of children, the amount of women, the amount of Black and Latino um, incarcerated individuals, just looking at that, it's abysmal, it's disgraceful, and every other type of attitude that you can think of.
Yeah.
And so for me, I look at people are always like, why are you always criticizing the Biden administration? I said, I give them credit for some things, but you know, President Biden has, the law and order president. He's throwing money after these police departments without requiring them to reform, to fix, to change the way that they deal with the occupied communities of African Americans and brown people, black and brown people. It's madness. It's
Yeah,
madness.
again, going back to the messaging part, the biggest issue right now with the Democratic Party, and this includes the Congressional Black Caucus. Hear me out. The Congressional Black Caucus.
Mm.
They not only don't does the Democrats and the CBC have a messaging problem. They don't. The biggest messaging problem is do you see them talking to the black press?
No.
And that's a major problem, and it's been proven time and again. This election that just went by, the elections 2020, when a candidate, and this includes Republican candidates, because Republican candidates in the South, different offices, won when they took out ads in the black press,
Yeah.
when they spoke to the black press. We have publishers down in Atlanta and other places who have said the GOP came. This guy from the GOP came over. This
Mm.
candidate, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and then you look at their paper and they got major ads, and guess what happened? They won.
I
They
went.
won.
I went to an event recently and met a congressman. He spoke, and I said I would love to talk to you because I want to do some stories.
Come on, wake up, Barrington.
He had no, no, I'm not asleep. And he handed me over to his chief of staff and called the chief of staff. Never answered the phone. Called him several times, and at one point the call just ended. Called the office, directed to the communications director, who said that he can't talk to me directly. I got to go online to request an interview. Did all that. This is about a month now. Not even a response.
Yeah. Well, anyway, congratulations to the Exonerated
But
Five.
I do want to say before I go that one of the few people that I've been able, that if I call,
Yes.
he will talk to me, Representative Bobby Scott of Virginia.
Nice.
So I gotta shout him out because I don't want to pretend that everybody and I mean, there are other members of the CBC that I've been able to talk to because they had a communications person who was really, really good about getting us with them. And then, of course, because you can ask and they can say no. But I asked, and they said yes. So there's some folks who's a lady who just won mayor for LA.
Yes, Karen Bass.
Karen Bass.
Karen Bass was once a friend of this program as well.
Yeah. Her
when she was at the CBC.
She's a friend of black journalists because several times I've reached out and she's been kind enough to talk to us. So
yeah, but it's still too many that and it's probably, as you noted, the communications person, because again, there's a scorecard that comes out regularly on the hirings or who has who in their position.
From the Joint Center.
From the Joint Center, exactly. Spencer Overton just recently left. But they're carrying on that tradition.
Yeah.
And you have these folks who can't identify with black folks, even though they're working for black folks. They can't identify with the black press or black media in general. And so when we do call, it's hard to get a representative. And that's unfortunate. Barrington, the House Ways and Means Committee met yesterday, and they've decided to release the tax returns of former President Donald Trump. It's going to be interesting in the coming days as these tax returns are released to the public. Barrington, what are you expecting?
I'm expecting him to tell us that he's a millionaire, not a billionaire. Mm-hmm. We already see that for the entirety of this dude's presidency, the IRS never did an audit. They started a couple of audits when he left office, but they never completed what was supposed to be an annual audit of his finances. And I don't know. I would hope that the folks who the folks who ran the IRS are will run out with Trump. But if they are anybody who they find who is responsible for that, they need to run them out of their job.
Yeah.
Because if you there, I don't know if you've seen, but there's several stories of this dude weaponizing the IRS to go after his enemies, like when he went after I think it was Adam Schiff,
Adam Schiff.
and Comey and Ray, that they had what they call these aggressive IRS audits.
Audits, yes.
The ones that where they poke through every orifice and go through every single part of your taxes and stuff. So I think a lot of things are going to come out. The question is, Stacey, what's going to be done? Because this dude is still being treated with kid gloves.
Yeah, and here's the thing with that. So no president in history has gone a full term without releasing his taxes, right?
Yeah,
and he did, and not only that, he announced that he's running for president again without releasing his taxes.
Yeah.
So at some point,
that's because they let him, Stacey.
At some point, it has, this had to have happened, and you know what? The pressure that the House Ways and Means Committee put on this situation is to be commended, because you need to know, the public needs to know the finances of the U.S. president. It's no question. You need to know what interest he, or one day she, may have. You have to know that.
And if you look at the $2 billion that Kushner got from the Saudis, we don't know that foreign entities, foreign countries haven't injected those types of monies into his bank accounts.
Yep.
So but trust and believe that they better get everything out while they can, because by the time January 3rd comes around, them clowns that are running the house are going to make sure that they put protective shield around him, and there'll be no investigation, no nothing. But I'm very pleased, because I think most of us who support the idea of justice and fairness, that type of thing, it's time for him to be held accountable for most of the things that he's done.
Yeah, and real quick, before we gotta cover the bishop right quick. But before we do, Cheryl Smith, Texas Metro News, and iMessenger Media is giving us a little bit of a breaking news this morning. Aaron Dean, a former Fort Worth police officer, has been sentenced to 11 years for the murder of how do you say her name? Barrington Jefferson. Tatiana Jefferson. It's a first for Fort Worth. Cheryl is reporting. Thanks so much, Cheryl, for giving us that piece of breaking news there. 11 years for murder. This goes to what we were saying earlier, right? Murder usually carries 25 to life, life sentence. 11 years for the murder.
But he's gonna get out. He's gonna get out in 5.5 with good behavior.
With good behavior, probably half that, because these are state murder charges, as opposed to any federal involvement.
Mm-hmm.
So Aaron Dean, the former Fort Worth police officer, has been sentenced to 11 years for the murder of Tatiana Jefferson, at first for Fort Worth. Cheryl Smith is reporting. Thanks, Cheryl.
Imagine that 2020, the amount of Black people that they've killed, and that's a first for Fort Worth.
It's unreal. Barrington, before we close this morning, the New York bishop with a large following has been indicted on charges of fraud and extortion. Lamar Whitehead, who is known as the Bling Bishop, was robbed at gunpoint while delivering a sermon in Brooklyn earlier this year. He's accused of defrauding a parishioner out of her retirement savings, attempting to extort and defraud a businessman, and lying to the FBI. He was arrested this week. He allegedly used threats or false promises to collect money from his victims. One parishioner invested approximately $90,000 of her retirement savings
Yeah.
with him, which he reportedly spent or allegedly spent on luxury goods
Shame,
and personal
shameful.
purposes.
Shameful. But you know that for me, I always look to see what these guys congregants do. Most of them ain't gonna leave. They're gonna stay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you know, he should be a little worried because if he doesn't go to prison for anything else, he's going to prison for lying to the FBI.
Well, and that's the thing. There's no question about it, right?
Yeah,
They have that as the major fallback
yeah,
here.
yeah,
And look, when FBI agents was executing the search warrant, the bishop allegedly falsely claimed that he had no cell phones other than one he had on him, but he actually owned a second phone, which, of course, during the search, they found.
yeah,
So he's charged with 2 counts of wire fraud,
yeah,
each of which carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison
yeah,
if he's convicted. He's also charged with 1 count of extortion, which carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, and 1 count of making material false statements, which carries a sentence of 5 years.
mm,
And sometimes you might get in a situation like this, a judge, if you're convicted, he might say that those sentences will run consecutively instead of
yeah,
concurrently, which
yeah, yeah,
means life.
yeah. So if he's guilty, praise the Lord and put him in prison.
But look, David Youngblood said, I told you months ago something didn't sound right about a preacher with $1 million worth of jewelry
Yeah,
on his Sunday morning wardrobe.
yeah, yeah. It's
It's
crazy.
unbelievable. And like you said, Barrington, I can only think that the parishioners will stand by him. We've seen that time and time again, right?
Yeah.
Um, and
Creflo
you know,
Dollar,
it's their
Creflo
prerogative.
Dollar, Bishop Eddie Long. You know, they have done such egregious things, and the congregation is right there with them. It makes me shake my head. It makes me wonder. But you know, hey, what can I say?
Yeah, this guy, he's a showman. This guy's a showman, as
Yeah,
we see.
and that's a part of the show. I wouldn't be surprised if the guys that robbed him are guys. It might be insurance fraud. They might be steal the stuff and get the insurance money. So who knows?
Yeah,
I
who
guess
knows is
time
right.
will tell.
Yeah. Barrington Sam, it's always a pleasure having you on Let It Be Known. Really
Thank you, sir.
appreciate you. You did call somebody a fool today, but it was Jim Jordan. So I think we can give you
Jim,
a
Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan is more than a fool. He's a jackass. I'll leave you with that. You see, Stacy, I've been so good because
Austin says
the
that
things
you
I want
need
to
to
call
continue
them,
to behave.
huh?
Austin writes that you need to continue to behave.
Okay, Austin. Just because you said so, I will. I've been good
Anybody,
today. I
listen.
haven't cursed or said in anything untoward today. So maybe because it's Christmas.
Hello, thanks so much, everybody, for joining. Let It Be Known. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for having me.